And then if you need a book to go by today, raise your hand now, and Barry Cook will come down and give you a book to follow along with. Johnny's not here, but he set me up for failure already. I know last week he said I'd do a good job here this week, and now he's not here, and yeah, it'll fall apart on me, but that's all right. I'm just hoping they'll finally get some more people so I can get out of this rotation. I feel like every 5 weeks I'm up, and I'm the worst of the 5, and so I figure surely somebody will take my spot and do a lot better job. Chris, I always pick at you because you're always sitting up here, but if you don't mind, lead us in prayer to start off with.
Heavenly Father, we again give you thanks for the beautiful day you've blessed us with. We pray that you'll be with us as we put away the things of the world and focus on your word for these moments of Bible study. We pray that you'll bless Dusty and each of the teachers this morning with a good remembrance of what they've prepared. Help us as hearers that we can listen to you of eternity. We pray that you'll continue to bless us and keep us as we leave this place. Forgive us of any failures that we have. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you. I wasn't saying that to get nobody, but thank you. I appreciate that. Just a quick recap. We're in Judges, and we've been talking about Gideon, and Johnny set us up good with Gideon, and he's a scared person, scared individual. He would worship at night. He still followed along with God's word, whereas his father and the other people, they were worshiping Baal and Asherah, which are the male and female counterparts of fertility. And I had talked about that, I think, the last time I was up here. And they had altars, and he tore down the altars. And then he was given the name Jerubbaal. And let me see here. I've got all my notes are not here with me, so you got to bear with me a little bit. But if I'm not mistaken, Jerubbaal meant Gideon ought to wear the name Jerubbaal because he had to bail at Baal, the god of Baal, to defend for himself, contend for himself. That's what it was. So his father, Joash, said he ought to wear the name Jerubbaal, meaning let Baal contend for himself, because he tore down the altars of Baal and Asherah. So after that, God has decided you're the one that's going to be the judge. You're going to lead us. They've been for 40 years they were doing what they were supposed to. Then they had a 7-year spell where they were under somebody else's lead. They wasn't following God's way. And like we said, it's just a constant rotating pattern through Judges. I do what we're supposed to. God delivers us out of evil. We go back to our evil ways. We fall under somebody else's rule, and then we just keep the cycle going. So let me see here. And then, what was it? Gideon, he wanted a sign. And so, and I may say these backwards, but I know this is correct as far as what I'm telling you. So the fleece was dry and the ground was wet, and then he thought, well, maybe that was an accident. So then they did it in the opposite way. The fleece was wet and the ground was dry. So, you know, God is just having a lot of patience with him and constantly reassuring him, yes, you're my man. You're the one who's going to lead us now. So let me start off, and let me just read our passages today before we go into the rest of the lesson. So it's Judges. You can read out of the book, or if you're reading out of your Bible, it's Judges 7, 1 through 21. And if I say these names wrong, I'm sorry. Then Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all the people who were with him rose early and encamped beside the well of Harod, so that the camp of the Midianites was on the north side of them by the hill of Moreh in the valley. And then the Lord said to Gideon, the people who are with you are too many for me to give to the Midianites in their hands. Lest Israel claim glory for itself against me, saying, my own hand has saved me. Now therefore proclaim in the hearing of the people, saying, whoever is fearful and afraid, let him turn and depart at once from Mount Gilead. And 22,000 of the people returned, and 10,000 remained. And the Lord said to Gideon, the people are still too many. Bring them down to the water, and I will test them for you. Then it will be that of whom I say to you, this one shall go with you, the same shall go with you, and of whomever I say to you, this one shall not go with you, the same shall not go. So he brought the people down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, everyone who laps from the water with his tongue, as the dog laps, you shall set apart by himself. Likewise, everyone who gets down on his knees to drink. Hang on just a second. Then the Lord said to Gideon, by the 300 men who lapped, I will save you, and deliver the Midianites into your hand. Let all the other people go, every man to his place. So the people took provisions and their trumpets in their hands. And he sent away all the rest of Israel, every man to his tent, and retained those 300 men. Now the camp of Midian was below him in the valley. It happened on the same night that the Lord said to him, arise, go down against the camp, for I have delivered it into your hand. But if you are afraid, go down to the camp of Purah your servant, and you shall hear what they say. And afterward your hand shall be strengthened to go down against the camp. Then he went down with Purah his servant to the outpost of the armed men who were in the camp. Now the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the people of the east were lying in the valley as numerous, and try to picture this in your head for me because of these numbers, okay? All the people of the east were lying in the valley as numerous as locusts, and their camels were without number, as the sand by the seashore in multitude. Now, in my mind, when I see that, I'm thinking, I can take an hourglass full of sand, and it's, so big, and it's an hourglass because it takes a whole hour for all that sand to run through. But if you counted every granule of sand in that, I'm guessing hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of grains of sand in that hourglass. So that's a huge number, is what I'm trying. If you can kind of visualize how huge of a number that is. And when Gideon had come down, there was a man telling a dream to his companion. He said, I have a dream. To my surprise, a loaf of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian, and it sent a tent and struck it so that it fell and overturned, and the tent collapsed. Then his companion answered and said, this is nothing else but the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. Into his hand God has delivered Midian and the whole camp. And so it was when Gideon heard the telling of the dream and its interpretation that he worshipped. He returned to the camp of Israel and said, arise, for the Lord has delivered the camp of Midian into your hand. Then he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet into every man's hands, and with empty pitchers and torches inside the pitchers. So I'm going to say this leading up to my lesson here in a minute. So you've got a trumpet in one hand, and you've got a pitcher, and then you've put a torch inside this pitcher. Okay, so remember that torch is inside this pitcher for later on in the lesson. Then he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet into every man's hands with an empty pitcher and torches inside the pitchers. And he said to them, look at me and do likewise. Watch, and when I come to the edge of the camp, you shall do as I do. When I blow the trumpet, I and all who are with me, then you blow the trumpet on every side of the whole camp and say, the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. So Gideon and the 100 men who were with him came to the outpost of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just as they had posted the watch, and they blew the trumpets, broke the pitchers that were in their hands. Then the 3 companies blew the trumpets and broke the pitchers. They held the torches in their left hands. I don't know what's going on here. In their right hands. Wait a minute, I lost my place. They held the torches in their left hands and the trumpets in their right hands for blowing, and they cried, the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. And every man stood in place all around the camp, and the whole army ran and cried out and fled. So let me get this thing up here. Maybe, I don't know if my pocket's causing that to go nuts on us or not. So first thing I want to say is I wonder if it's ironic, to me it is a little bit. Whenever we start off reading, they're encamped beside the well of Herod, I'm sorry. In Hebrew, Herod means terrified. And so, to me, Gideon is obviously, he's terrified this whole time. I mean, he's constantly wanting reassurance from God to say, yes, you are the one I've decided on. It is going to happen. Do what I'm telling you, it's going to work out. So that was one of the things that I thought, right off the bat in the first reading. So then the next thing is, after I've read it, and I'm thinking about the number of locusts and camels and, comparing it to how many men there was, he's got 32,000 to start with. But the Lord is like, that's too many. I'm not going to use all all the soldiers you have. And so if I'm Gideon and I'm a big fraidy, scaredy cat, kind of like he is, I'll be thinking, what? They've got, probably hundreds of thousands of men. I don't know that. I'm making that number up, but I'm just based off what we're reading, okay? But the one thing I do know is, if I'm Gideon, I've got 32,000, so I've got a fighting chance. But the Lord said, no, that's too many. And I do kind of understand, because the Lord is all powerful, and he's saying, if you take these 32,000 men with you, then you're not going to think it was me. You're going to think it was your own hands that saved you. And it's not going to be your own hands. It's going to be me that saves you. So he's showing his power and how he can control, So that's one thing. But then he says, okay, tell them if they don't want to be here, go home. So 22,000 left. So automatically my number's been cut down into a third, And I was sitting back here this morning listening to Chris, and I was also thinking about my lesson, because I don't have any notes with me. I worked on this at school, and I didn't bring them. I just messed up. But so there was 110 people in this auditorium today. If you take, to make this, picture, I have to picture things till I can remember and understand. Roughly, if you took this auditorium and you multiplied it, you set it beside each other, kind of like if you look in two mirrors, you see the reflection, it keeps bouncing an endless number as long as your vision will see it. 320 of these rooms is what he started with. Okay? Now what he's going to finish with is 3 of these rooms. Now that was Chris's, not what's in here right now. I mean, that was when Chris was preaching this morning. So if that kind of puts in perspective, 3 auditoriums versus 320 auditoriums. That's a big difference. But so he had 10,000 left, and he said, I'm going to shorten this number down, send them to the river and drink. And I'm going to step away, because with this, this is not said in the Bible anywhere. So I want to make sure that I'm not, but what it is said is, the ones who got down on their hands and knees and drank were put in one side, and the ones who lapped like dogs was on the other side. So now that part is in the Bible, or in our text too. But the one thing I was trying to figure out is, why are the ones who lapped the ones he kept versus the ones who drank? Now I know he was wanting to shorten the number. I do get that. But a lot of times there's lots of things that are just said in the Bible, and I kind of question, wonder why. What's the significance? Now, I don't know this. This is just me thinking. That's why I want to step away. But I was thinking, if you're taking men that may have to go into battle. So Gideon doesn't really know the Lord's plan exactly at this time. So if you get down your hands and knees to drink out of the water, you're putting your face down in the water, and you have no idea what's surrounding you, what's going on. Okay? Now, again, this is just my opinion. This is nothing. But if I'm lapping like a dog, then you've probably picked the water up, and you're taking your tongue to lick it up. But at the same time, my head is not down where I'm not aware of my surroundings. At least these people have a chance to look at what's going on. So I just wonder if there's something to do with these are the people who see my way as well, not just I'm kind of blindly following. I'm aware of what's going on. Now, I don't know that. Again, that's just my thinking, trying to figure it out just because. So, but anyway, we get this number cut down to 300. And the Lord's like, okay, this is your army right here. These are the ones who's going to do it. We're going to deliver you out of evil with these 300 men. Well, Gideon's just like me, pretty worried, thinking, what am I going to do? How's this going to work? And so the Lord tells him, if you still don't believe, go down to the camp. Listen, they're already afraid of you already. And if you're afraid to go by yourself, which I would be, take Purah, your servant. Now, let me see if I can find it in here. There's a section in this companion, and I think it's important that I mention. It doesn't change the story of what we're studying, but it's important to know this, that in the time, let me find it here, with the Baals, a lot of times they changed the last name and added A-L to the end of it, like Ishbaal, or I can't say it right, but Meribbaal probably, M-E-R-I-B-B-A-A-L. So they're adding the name of Baal, which is a false god, to the end of their name, whereas previously they were using the A-H, like Elijah, which means it was shortened down for Yahweh, which is the Lord, or the E-L, meaning God, like in Samuel. So I kind of, I'm thinking to myself, Purah with an A-H is meaning one of God's servants. Is what, he's a pure man as well. So I think that's worth bringing up anyway. I mean, it doesn't change anything, but it's mentioned in this companion, so I felt like it was important to bring up. But Purah and Gideon go down. So they get to the edge of the camp, and they're just listening. And then that's whenever we find out about the dream. And let me go back over here. And it says, let me find it right here, where my dream is. What verse? I have had a dream. To my surprise, a loaf of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian. It came to a tent and struck it so that it fell and overturned, and the tent collapsed. Then his companion answered and said, this is nothing else but the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. Into his hand God has delivered Midian and the whole camp. So when I was reading that, again, I'm sitting here thinking there's got to be some significance to a loaf of barley bread. Why is it not just a loaf of bread? That's just me being inquisitive. So I started looking it up, and I don't know this is why, but I do know what the meaning was for it. Barley was for lowly, poor people. So the children of Israel were considered these lowly people, and that's why, or at least I think that's why the vision was of barley bread. So, and then it doesn't say this, but in my mind, let me step over here like I did a minute ago. I'm just picturing this. It rolls into a tent, the tent collapsed. So you've got this lowly, poor person that's the loaf of bread, and then a tent that collapsed. So what I'm thinking in my mind is, this is Gideon, who you're thinking is lowly person, and that rolled into the big tent, the tent for the commanders. I mean, there's always a difference. If you look at any of the movies and stuff, you've got your soldiers that we don't care about. We just sling them together, hope y'all stay warm. Then you've got this great big tent where all the captains stay, all the food is, and where the maps are rolled out for our strategies, things like that. So in my mind, I'm thinking that rolled into that big tent. So when you take out the commanders, you're wiping out the army in essence. So again, that's just my opinion. I'm just from what I'm reading. So after they talk about that, Gideon and Purah feel pretty confident now. He's got a little bit more confidence in himself, confidence in what the Lord has told him. And it shocks me to think about how much patience the Lord had with him. I mean, think of all the examples that he gave him. I mean, every time the Lord was questioned, he answered, and he did it calmly, and he said, I'm going to show you. You're the one I picked. I'll prove it to you. I'll prove it to you. I'll prove it to you. I mean, it was just over and over and over. And so finally Gideon has decided, this is it. I've got it. You know, I'm the man. He's going to protect me. We're taking it back. We're taking the land back over. So he goes back he stopped and worship first. Then he goes back to the camp. And I don't know, I couldn't find anywhere in the Bible, and I tried to reference it, I tried to Google it to see if they, you know, because it's hard for me sometimes to find things in the Bible that I'm really looking for. So I don't know how he came up with the plan. I don't know if the Lord sent a messenger to him to give him this plan, or whether he came up with his own, or whether him and Purah, I don't know that. But what I do know is they took trumpets and pitchers with torches, and they put the torches inside the pitcher, and he separated them up into 3 groups. So they've kind of surrounded, made a triangle around the camp. And in the companion, it talks about the timing. In the New Testament, night is split up into 4 parts, it says, and in the Old Testament, it's in 3 parts. And according to the companion right here, it was midnight whenever Gideon attacked. So in my mind, I'm thinking, and again, this is just me talking, I don't know this, but I'm thinking, all right, it's midnight, all the guys have ate, the fires have possibly went out if they don't have somebody up, because they're outnumbering Gideon's men by a huge margin. So they're probably not worried. You know, they're thinking, why would they come into the middle of our camp and attack us? So I'm just guessing, I'm speculating. Perhaps there's no lights. So whenever Gideon blows his trumpet, of course everybody else is supposed to blow their trumpet. Well, when you take 100 and 100 and 100, you know, all these people, all of you blowing trumpets at the same time surrounding us, I think it's going to sound like a whole lot more people, a lot greater army than what you really have. And then, and I'm speculating again, of course, if you have the torch inside the pitcher, they slam the pitcher on the ground to break the pitcher. Now, on this part I'm speculating, you know, I've seen fire like you've used oils or some type you've wrapped it around the torch to keep it burning so that it don't burn down onto your hand, burn you. So if you slam this pitcher that the torch is in, when it hits the ground, it's going to explode and probably going to hit in 2 or 3 spots. And as long as the oil is on this rag, it's going to keep burning until it burns the rag up. So if 100 people on 3 sides of you slam this down, and let's just say it makes 3 spots, each one makes 3 different spots, well then you look like you have tripled the army, you know. And it's pitch black, and I'm waking you up. You know, this others are asleep in their tents, and it mentions how they fled. But now in the companion, it talks about they were grabbing their swords, they were grabbing their spears, and where they couldn't see, and they were scared and fleeing, they were actually running into each other, and a lot of them was killing each other in their process of trying to run out and flee. And of course, all of them were chanting the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. And when I first read that, I thought that's kind of a vain thing to do, you know, to throw your name in there with the Lord, because he's the one who is telling you what to do. But then I tried to think about it, stepped back a little bit more and thought, okay, part of it is they've had the vision of Gideon, which is the barley bread, you know, taking down the tent. So they're scared of Gideon and of the Lord because he is the Lord's messenger. So I think it's a twofold thing there. I don't think it was vainness as much as it was he's working through Gideon. So they're throwing Gideon's name out there with him because that's who they can physically see. And I also kind of thought that it was, I don't know if it's symbolic of something else in the Bible whenever they marched the walls of Jericho. And the impenetrable walls of Jericho fell with the sound of the horns as well. So I don't know if there's some correlation of the Lord showing his power there as well, you know, doing some of the same. I've talked this whole time. Anybody else got any thoughts, comments?
Dusty, the Lord often uses fears that of the Midianites and Amalekites had the same dream or you know, and they were coming to the same conclusion as those other people that, you know, that, and then like you said, you know, there were no, well, we deal with lights. You know, when it was dark, it was dark.
Right.
And nobody attacked and did battle at night. I mean, that's just something in the last 50 years. I mean, you know,
Right.
you didn't attack at night, and so, you know, you're woken up in the middle of the night and you can't see, and you're afraid because of this dream, and then everybody is shouting exactly what the people in the camp that come in is the sword of Gideon and God. You know, this is just God working the way he does. He doesn't have to do a lot of miracles because man's fears sometimes can do more damage than he could ever, he have to do on his own, because we often react so violently to our fears.
Right.
You know, and the three sides, well, that leaves one side for retreat. It probably wasn't a good avenue of retreat. You know, Gideon had probably already kind of decided to put them in a situation where the ones that want to run, they can run that away. And of course, I think they ended up killing most of them.
Yeah, later on. You're right. Yeah, they followed them, and later on, that's right. I was reading ahead, and I don't know who's got the next week's, but I think it's Eric. But I was reading ahead a little bit, and you're right, they did. And I can't remember if, I think, matter of fact, if I'm remembering correct, they came from the east, and so I think they fled to the west. I think I'm telling you right now. I may say that backwards though. Again, that was from reading ahead a little bit. So, you know, I'm pretty well done with the lesson as far as teaching the lesson. Now, I always say what I got out of the lesson, and Barry just talked about it. You know, fear for the way we live now, you know, is a lot different. I mean, I do think the Lord talks to us, but it's not the same as we read about in the Bible. And honestly, if I was driving down the road or if I was sitting on a tree and the Lord did really speak to me, I'd probably think, scare me bad. I think I'm going to Moccasin Bend. You know, I mean, I'm nuts. I've lost it. Just being honest. Hopefully, if it is my brain messing up, hopefully it's telling me the right thing. I remember the Bible correctly and what I need to do. But the one thing is, generally speaking now, history doesn't repeat itself exactly. You know, we for the most part, we learn from mistakes. Now, we still make the same general mistake, but we don't make exactly. But in the Old Testament here, they seem to make the same mistake over and over and over, and the Lord forgives them. After so long, he continually forgives them. And I think that we can use that in our life now. We can make mistakes, you know. I'm not saying it's correct to to do what we're not supposed to do, but when we're pure of heart and we come forward, just like JT did today, which was, you know, an encouragement to anybody, the Lord will forgive us. And that's something we always have to remember. Face your fears, and then if you don't face your fears, if you give in to temptation, you're still the Lord's child, and he's always going to forgive us as long as we come to him wholeheartedly and sincerely sorry for what we did.
I think a lot of this story and you know, guilty as charged. We realize a lot of times what the Lord wants us to do, but we balk.
Mhm.
No, I don't think I'm the one. I can't do that. Really? But you know, you look back on the people of the Old Testament, and you got Moses, and you got Saul, and you got Gideon, and you got many of the leaders that God, you know, and Esther, and that God was almost having to push them into the leadership position. And it's kind of like, you sure you got this right, Lord? I mean, you know, questioning God, not, but we still have to battle that. And these, you know, a lot of these leaders became great, faithful men and women repeated in Hebrews, you know, but they God had to get them going a lot of times, but unless you go, you know, and do what the Lord has for you to do, you're not going to get the faith that you really need.
Right.
You know, and you know, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? You know, I had a lesson I always taught, you know, sooner or later you have to step out. You know, sooner or later, Christ and God, they don't step out for you. They teach you, they nourish you, they put, you know, but you're the one that has to take the step. You know, and that is, you know, it's not a leap of faith per se. It's a calculated thing, but you eventually have to put yourself out there.
Right.
And then have the faith then your faith grows, because God always and Christ will always be with you. I always like to realize that, you know, I'm not the one that needs to be doing it. You know, God and Christ do it. I'm just the hand. I'm just the feet. I'm just whatever they have chosen. You know, they're the ones that are behind it, and God's will always be done. You don't have to work. It goes back to what Mordecai told Esther. Okay, God's going to do, he's going to save his people. You can either be a part of it, or you can choose to sit back and do nothing, and then it won't save you.
Right.
You know, and so, but Gideon was one that stands out as it need a little bit more proof, I guess. But eventually, he stepped out and stepped up, and those 300 men. You know, like it took a bit to be one of those 300 men.
Absolutely.
You know, I got a feeling that God was really culling the ones that didn't want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were too afraid to not turn and go with the first 22,000.
You're right.
There's still a lot of them that, 9,700 of the that God decided for them. No, y'all just don't need to go.
Yeah. Appreciate you, but you go on your way. and the same holds true, just like I started the lesson off saying, I feel like I'm the worst one up here to be talking to you. It's the same thing, but I don't know if it's my wife or if I was talking with Denise Hackett one day. How do I stand in front of the Lord one day when I was asked to try, at least to attempt to get up here and teach, and say, I said no. I mean, no matter how bad I do, as long as I'm not telling you the wrong thing, at least I was attempting, So that's the lesson for today, and thank you so much. And hope to see you guys, everybody here tonight.